The first 3 weeks of the eruption here in Hawaii, crazy things would happen in the middle of the night. A new fissure would open up and it would threaten a new neighborhood. Thousands of people were evacuated from their homes. I started the Hawaii Tracker Facebook group to help people understand what's going on and get their questions answered.
Hey, how's it going? We're live. This is Fissure 20.
We had hundreds of people all throughout the neighborhoods sending in videos, articles, and images. We spent a lot of time making sure the accurate information gets out.
This is live. There's still lava moving.
They weren't just sharing a story, they were helping their neighbor. If a family was being evacuated, my group would just jump in and help out. It was huge. They were watching out for each other.
Hello everybody, thank you for coming. Thank you for the support from everybody.
As we go through this, we're growing closer together as a community. When tragedies like this strike, you really realize how much you need each other.
We are the Hawaiian Volcano Education and Resilience Institute, HVERI for short. A lot of people know us from the 2018 eruption of Kilauea in the Lower East Rift Zone. Working under Hawaii Tracker on the Facebook group. Since then, we've been trying to carry on and take the lessons, the hard lessons that were learned during that eruption and try and prepare for the next major disaster that comes to our island.
Yeah, so we do that through two different programs. One is volcano education, and the other part is digital resilience, which we address through online groups on social media. So the way the two programs work together is that the social media networks end up being a distribution pathway for all the information. And having that network in place means we can provide more than just volcano education, but any other preparedness information as well.
What we were working for really came about in the Mauna Loa eruption in 2022. Within hours of that eruption starting, we had the mayor, Mitch Roth, we had USGS HVO Ken Hahn on the stream trying to help flush out a little bit of the ongoing because it's so new. It's completely different from our previous major eruption, which was 2018.
One of the things that Talmadge and I were talking about was how do we deal with social media? It was something we needed to figure out and get right. Our job is to get information to the public and make sure that the public get it as well as possible and as correctly as possible. When Philip and Dane started coming to and live streaming the meetings, it was great because we were reaching more people than we normally would. So when the eruption actually happened, we had this relationship. The interviews we did during the eruption, the most fun ones were the ones with Philip and Dave because they were more relaxed and we knew we were getting to the local community and people were asking questions. So those were the best, I think. I just want to really give a shout out to those guys and how we worked as a team on this eruption. It really worked out well and we got to a lot of people we wouldn't have normally gotten.
Aloha everyone, and welcome to our weekly Hawaiian Volcano Tracker. Today is Thursday, July 31st, 2025. Kilauea is still in her pause, awaiting episode 30. But we have had another geohazard of note this past week, the tsunami originated by the Kamchatka earthquake earlier this week. So we'll talk about both those things, and we'll wrap it up today with our third topic, which is going to be our commemoration of the ending phase of the 2018 eruption, the ending of the main phase of the 2018 eruption. So we'll replay a presentation for you guys to maybe not relive, but for us to revisit the 2018 eruption in the context of everything that's happened since then, which is really a new thing for us, I think. So Dane, how are you doing this week?
Been a busy week, with lead up to episode 30 and then the Kamchatka magnitude 8.8, both of which we'll talk more about. And then going to be a busy weekend for me as well. We're working with some civil defense training, so it's good to be more involved and trying to integrate further into what the emergency managers at the county and state levels do normally. Because what we do and what they do is somewhat different, but we feel like there's a bridge and going to be working on that too.
Yeah, and if you've been under a rock and haven't seen anything about the tsunami, didn't actually have many major impact here in Hawaii, but it was really great that we were able to activate and practice our response and learn what we can still improve upon for the next time. So we're lucky that time, and great for us to continue our preparedness work. That's really why we do all this work, is to improve preparedness on our island.
Yeah. I just thought of something. You remember Mauna Loa's eruption 2022? I said that it was a flank eruption of Mauna Loa on training wheels. I almost feel like this magnitude 8.8 with the thrust and everything, it was almost the worst case scenario on training wheels again, type of thing. A great training exercise. Pretty
much. That was the sixth biggest earthquake recorded worldwide since 1900. So for it to not have destructive impact is really lucky for us. Yeah.
Right.
More on that later, though. And yeah. So Dane will be leading discussion on taking questions in the chat as usual, and then he'll actually be leading our tsunami segment later on with Lou, and then we'll transition to our 2018 stuff at the end there. So anything else before we get going, Dane?
No, I think that's it. If you got any comments, volcano stuff up front, questions and comments, volcano stuff up front, then we'll do the tsunami stuff in the mid. I might not be able to answer many of the tsunami questions. I'm just putting that out there. But we're going to go through it, and we have some qualified and interesting people on the dock to show you what they're talking about.
Awesome. Appreciate that, Dan. Looking forward to that, too. All right, let's switch our screen. Get ourselves ready for our summary. Okay, now let's back. All right. Hello, everyone. This is our Hawaiian Volcano Summary for July 31st, 2025. Another longer than average 11-day pause so far has followed episode 29 of Kilauea's summit eruption. But ongoing inflation, tremor, degassing, and a return of intermittent glow causes us to anticipate episode 30 to start anytime now through the next 3 days, end of Sunday night. Here you can see the live camera, the V1, with just a degassing coming from the north vent there, which is the one also glowing. And we'll switch to show you guys the V2 camera, which is currently now in fog, what was visible earlier, and the V3 view from the side as well. So not a lot to see right now, but we'll keep an eye on what's happening here as we go through our update. What's happened over the last 10 days or so, you can see through these nighttime views of the S2 camera. What you're seeing or not seeing is a very little glow. There is not a whole lot of glow visible on this camera. The glow that popped up in the last night is too faint to be seen on this camera, so it's really been pretty quiet visually for the last week. We have our tilt plot for the last month here, showing the summit in blue with the buildup between episodes causing this rise, and an episode occurs, it causes our drop in ground tilt. So you can see we've been recovering for the last 11 days here since episode 29, and we're not quite to the threshold where we activated our high fountains or higher fountains for episode 29, but we have reached a similar point as episode 28, and that is the range of uncertainty for one episode. Also on this tilt plot, we can see there was effects of the 8.8 Kamchatka tsunami, the earthquake itself, rolling the ground for several hours here. And this follows the foreshock that we can now call from last week, this earlier earthquake, also in that same region of Kamchatka. And overall, this fits within a pattern that we've seen over the last 3 months of episodes building up and relieving pressure. And so here we are waiting for the 30th episode of the ongoing eruption. And the USGS update from today, the daily update, says that we're still paused. Incandescence remains very low, and rare and faint glow is visible again from the north vent starting early this morning. The prognosis is that current inflation data suggests the next episode may occur between now and Sunday night. Looking at the impacts, they're likely to be gas and tephra, as usual, for these eruptions that are contained within a national park. So looking at the VOG forecast for the next couple of days here, you see that largely the plume blows to the southwest over the Kahului Desert, but it does wrap around to the South Kona area and up slope regions as well, both in the pure SO2 and in the particulate SO4 components. So this is showing the intermittent emissions from the volcano, and we expect to see a larger pulse when episode 30 begins, and that's the thing to watch out for there. Earthquakes on the island have been pretty quiet. And here is a map of Kilauea showing our background levels of activity that still remain fairly low considering we have an open vent to relieve pressure from the summit. Overall, the summit is stable, slightly expanding in diameter, whereas the East Rift Zone by Pu'u'o is still contracting long-term, and so there's no increased threat to people on the Lower East Rift at this time. The larger earthquakes we're talking about came from this region of Kamchatka. Here you can see the 8.8 and aftershocks that occurred, 6.9, 6.3, and 6.4. And this follows, as I mentioned, the 7.4 that occurred last week, 10 days ago, in the same region of Kamchatka. So we've had 2 tsunami notices there, watches to have, as well as the one earlier from Sandpoint earlier in the month as well, 7.3. Pretty active in the northern segment of the Pacific Ocean from Hawaii. So to wrap it up here, we'll just show you guys this propagation model put out by NOAA of the origin of the tsunami. It wraps past Hawaii and impacts the entire Pacific Basin. And you can see the effects could have been quite widespread if there was more damage. Here in Hilo, we saw a maximum run-up of 4.9 feet, 1.5 meters. Through a series of these oscillations that you see the ocean receding from a parking lot where it's surged into, and it comes over and over again in and out from the island itself and a parking lot. So not too bad in Hilo, with the largest impact in Maui, slightly larger, but no real damage to speak of. And that's our Hawaiian Volcano summary for this week. All right, so let's move to our hazard summary. And let me find the right screen here. Here we go. So I'll show you guys now the S2 camera daytime views over the last week, 10 days or so. So you can see that following episode 29, we've had largely trade winds blowing this gas cloud to the southwest, but you can see here that on the 28th and 29th, that we did have some slack winds that did drift the plume towards the camera and towards the north, which includes some of the national park overlooks. As this occurred in between eruptions, there likely wasn't much reported impact, but it is still possible, even during our dominant trade wind pattern summer months, to have occasional days where the wind shifts and there could be impacts even in the summertime. So that's what we look out for as our main impact here, is which direction is the wind going, and hopefully it stays this dominant pattern whenever the fountains do start up. Of course, our VOG measurement and prediction project source for our VOG model is from University of Hawaii Manoa, and this is what we shared a little earlier in our summary. This forecast of both the SO2 pure components, which is what comes out of the volcano, and as it flies through the atmosphere and it interacts with sunlight and moisture, it reacts to form sulfate particles, and so those are more visible, like the smog. That's the kind of visually blocking VOG, and so we see both of those layers here as well. This is inputting a 1,500 tons per day emission rate of sulfur dioxide, which is our average for in-between episodes, but we've seen that during an episode, this might jump up to 20, 30, 40,000 tons at the beginning, and so that's when we have those biggest impacts of gas. Just for context, to look and compare against in the future, here is our Purple Air Citizen Science Monitoring Network, showing largely in the green, although we do still have some elevated values, and especially in the South Kona area, even from our intermittent gas emissions. Our inter-episode gas emissions, still ongoing. So we'll leave our hazards there, and we'll just keep an eye on the weather as you watch the volcano as well. So coming to some observations, we will look at the F1 camera to start here. This is the thermal camera on Kilauea Summit. And so I've pulled it back to just after episode 29, so 9-10 days ago. And at this moment in time, the eruption has largely stopped moving lava, but we do have a little bit of a upwelling and ooze up flow here on the eastern side of the crater. That is at the start of the sequence. But as I started here, you'll see that resolves fairly quickly. And for most of the last 10 days, we see not a whole lot of action here. If you look closely, we can see the vent itself does show movement of gas and heat coming from within, even if that is harder to see through the fume. That's one thing the thermal camera is good for, is showing us that there is actually some activity happening right in there. Right? And that's one way to check when you can't visually look for faint glow, and you can't check for glow in the daytime as well, of course. So that's really a summary of what's been happening over the last week. And so the other way to look at this is, of course, our noon views, or what I've done here is take the Kita view camera and just take one image from noon each day for the last 10 days. And we'll play those here in a quick loop so we can see what changes are occurring visually on the crater. And if I play it at this scale, you probably don't see a whole lot except the gas dancing around a little bit there. So let me try to zoom this in to some segments to focus on what maybe you could see changing. So here's our vent, and there's an area right in here that you can kind of see sagging. It's like this area that had a very thick flow, largely very gas rich near the vent. Seems to still be degassing, and you can see that over the last 10 days, there's been a little bit of a settling, especially in this area right through here, most visibly. You can also see it if I scroll over to the left here a bit more. So here's another area, one of these perch ponds in the center of the crater, kind of right in there. You can see this whole thing is wiggling and sagging as well. And so once again, just releasing the gas that was trapped in the lava. This is different from what we've seen in previous weeks, where we've seen lava injecting underneath this crust and inflating it, bulging it upwards. Right? And we'll come to our B1 camera to see that as well. If we try to look from this view across the crater to the far side, we don't see a whole lot of change from this angle. It's just too far. But if we switch next to our B1 camera and do the same exercise with an image at noon each day, and once again, zoom it in. Zoom it in, here we go. And here in the foreground, we can see the settling of this far eastern side of the lava pool as well. So as you recall, episode 29 did not have very high fountains, but it produced a lot of lava that funneled all the way to this eastern part of the crater and filled in this entire area that you see is this smoother gray silvery area right here. So as that whole area was covered in very gassy lava, as the week has gone on, we've seen this surface settle back down as gas escapes. And yeah, as we've said before, we've shown you other weeks where we don't see this effect very long after the eruption, maybe for a day or two, and then we see the rest of the week with lava coming back into it and pushing these areas back up. And so that is not happening during this particular inter-episode between 29 and 30. And we are left to wait and wonder what that might mean for how episode 30 itself actually manifests, how it looks. Will we have high fountains? Will we have low fountains? Will we have a lot of lava? Those are all things we'll have to just wait and see. And of course, the changes at the vent are an important aspect and component of that. So to look at that a little more closely, and this is the last thing I'll throw in here for our observations, we have a set of images from fieldwork on July 24th and 25th from the Hawaiian Volcano Observatory. And starting with this image, taken from one of 3 drone flights that they conducted over the volcano. And we're looking down into the north vent, where all they can see at that moment is just lava rock rubble on the floor. And so this was earlier in the week. And as we mentioned earlier, it took until earlier this morning for the glow to be intermittently visible. So there was clearly some blockage happening there, but whatever it is working its way out as the glow is now visible once again today. And moving on, another drone view here. We're looking at the vent in this area over here, looking towards the north. Mauna Loa is rising off the screen in that direction there. So what you largely see is this big hill of tephra that's mounded up on this western and southwestern edge of the caldera. And very smooth, all new layers of material on the ground. And you see through there the tire tracks. Let's see if I can get this to zoom. There we go. You see the tire tracks USGS has been using to access their summit monitoring instruments. Especially the stuff that's nearby here is also getting covered in all this rock, and you need to go and brush it off and reset it and all of that stuff too. So here you see some of the adaptations USGS has had to do to keep working in this active erupting environment. There's another view of a low angle of the crater complex. You can see it from this angle. What I like to see is how we can see the upper crater rim here. And now we see this giant ramp that seems to lead right up of it there. There is our low mound of tephra on the rim. And at the base, we have what looks to me like the beginnings of a lava shield down here, right? This higher land that's causing lava to run off across a crater from that direction. Pretty interesting view. Continuing, we see that scientists are taking photographs at a constant angle and zoom during the summit overflight. And then they then process this using structure from motion and make a 3D elevation model. And that's how we get our measurements of how much lava has come out, how much your crater floor is lifted, how much area it's covered. And so hopefully we'll get an update of those maps next week or shortly thereafter, seeing as we see them collecting the data here earlier this week. And so to finish it off, here's a view across the summit area, looking at Waihinei Kapu, the Steaming Bluff area right here. A lot of people are parking in the parking lot area right around here and then walking out to see the view of the summit from there. So pretty nice landscape, and this is what it looks like, how nice and quiet it looks during the inter-episode time. When we have really well-timed episodes and everyone rushes to the park, we've seen cars parked all up and down the side of this road on either side here, and the parking lot completely full, and people jammed all the way, the entire trail, and all the way to the rim as well. So nice view of context right there. All right, and so with that, we'll wrap up our observations for this week. We have a lot to cover this week, so I'll keep it to that right now and pass it to Dane and Lou.
All right, thank you, Phil. Did want to see if you'd be able to stay on for just a couple of my slides, potentially help walk through some of the more scientific stuff. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'll be here. I'm just going to be backstage here, and so as needed, I'll try to jump in.
Okay.
As you need me.
I'll cue you because there's one in particular I'd like you to talk about.
All right.
All right. I will bring in Lou. Thank you, Phil, and you'll see one last time at least. All right. And welcome on, Lou.
Hey.
So we have some tsunami stuff to cover. It was an interesting day on Tuesday, and started around 2:30 that day. Saw the earthquake, but it wasn't for 5 to 6 hours later until we started to see the effects in Hawaii. But we're gonna walk through this historic, really historic magnitude 8.8 out of Kamchatka, and talk about some of its effects, the tsunami that it generated, and we'll start at the beginning. Start with the earthquake itself, then work on the tsunami and trace with it how it progressed across the Pacific. Sound like a plan?
Yeah, real quick, you said the effects of the tsunami didn't start till later in the afternoon, but I think there was a series of effects that happened not long after the earthquake. We'll talk about that as we go along here.
Right. Yeah, definitely. All right, so let's first start out with the earthquake itself. We're going to start at the origin, so we're at Kamchatka here. And I don't think we have any sound, but lots of vibration happening. And thing I want to, Phil's talked about it before, but that earthquake's so intense that you have difficulties standing up. And that becomes evident in this video here.
Yeah, if it's moving a 4,000-pound vehicle, you're shaking. Oh, she's on the ground right there.
And there's, they're making steps, little half steps to re-get their balance. Somebody's already gone to the ground. If could make it. And you can see the vehicles moving. So big earthquake at the source, right? And people went outdoors, get away from everything. She started in the doorway, but moved away from everything. Definitely a big shaker. Went for, I believe, almost 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But just wanted to show you the source there. Oh. Let me see. Let me try. Put it in this mode and then. But the first thing we saw, right? We didn't get the videos of the earthquake itself. The first things we saw were the signals propagating across the Pacific and through all these seismographs very quickly. And I'll show the progress of that here. So first seen in Alaska, but then quickly onto the West Coast, onto across America, and then seen worldwide, this signal through various seismographs. And even on different monitors, as Phil mentioned, the tilt graphs from Kilauea also picked up. This happens very quickly as well. So we got the notification, the alerts that an earthquake had happened. And then the question becomes, well, what type of earthquake? Is it a thrusting earthquake? Is it a strike slip earthquake? What are we talking about here? Because all those are important when it comes to generating a tsunami. And we found out rather quickly via the data that this was the type of earthquake and the movement. And this is where I'd like to bring back in Phil if he's available. Oh,
maybe. There he is.
Maybe.
He's there.
All right, I'll bring Phil right here if we can, just to highlight this a little bit for me here and the mechanism of the earthquake.
Yeah, so this is a pretty typical, what they call a mega thrust earthquake, which are these largest tsunami generating earthquakes. What you're seeing there is an indication of how the fault plane may actually look in 3 dimensions. And so at the top center, there is this pretty common geological beach ball diagram. And what that is actually shorthanding is what that block diagram actually looks like. So a geologist who's trained in looking at those beach balls can look at that circle and say, okay, that means that the fault is actually dipping to the northwest pretty shallowly, and a movement is actually going in the opposite direction, right, with the upper plate moving back to the southeast as that bottom base of it, which is kind of the tectonic plate, is moving to the northwest. So what's happening, if I can try to visualize my hands with my bad lighting here, but the one plate's going down underneath the other one, and it's going down, and this top part right here, it's bending, and finally it snaps back. And when that happens, all the water that's above right here gets lifted up, and all that water sloshes across the entire ocean. So that's what's happening there. And when we see a very big earthquake, that means a lot of energy released. That usually means either a long fault line or a high displacement of the ground. And either way, it amounts to a larger volume of water displaced. And my analogy has always been like throwing a log into a swimming pool. I heard that from Pacific Tsunami Museum many years ago. It stuck with me. If you imagine a log going into a swimming pool, it's going to cause a lot of sloshing for a long time. It may have a directed wave where the fat part of the log is facing and less so on the ends, but it's going to slosh everywhere and it's going to be pretty chaotic in there. Right? So that ground that might be long in the shape of a fault lifting up under the ocean is equivalent of that volume of log displacing that kind of shape underwater and it all kind of sloshing around. So that's what this is basically showing us, is like how the ground is thought to have moved. We can create these diagrams like the beach ball from all the seismometers that are around the Pacific Ocean and how the energy waves reach them and which direction they're pulling the instruments to start. So that's the short version of it. And we can probably go way more technical than that, but I won't.
No, so this would be defined as a reverse fault or a thrust earthquake, or how would you?
Yeah, all thrusts are essentially like a low angle reverse fault situation. Yeah.
All right.
And
thank you, Phil.
When we say reverse fault, that means there's 2 plates coming together, they're kind of pushing on each other. And the opposite would be called a normal fault extensional, where they're pulling apart, right? So we're not having a pulling apart situation. We're having it pushing together to generate much more energy, because you can actually build up energy that way. And it's hard to build up energy by pulling things apart. So
awesome.
That's the.
Thank you for that description. I figured you could do that much better than I could, and definitely glad you did that for me. Thank you, Phil. I'll bring back in Lou at this point, and we'll continue through our thing that we have prepared. All right. Thank you. See, I told you that was better than I could do.
Yeah. Good call.
All right. So, progressing on, we did get, I was looking at Professor G here and his initial mapping and the distance of the rupture. The USGS was putting out maybe 200 kilometers. He's thinking, and his team, maybe up to 400 kilometers. Big, movement, and very close to the 1952 earthquake, which was a similar size and location, but slightly different, taking place in between different historical rifts that had been formed in that region. So this is quite frequent along this fault. Moving on, we did get the NOAA tsunami generated outlook here. We've seen these for a lot of different earthquakes. They're not used for forecasts, but they do show pretty well how this tsunami is generated and then distributed all the way across the Pacific Ocean, from the Philippines and Australia all the way to Chile and the mainland United States. Just a huge amount of area covered, and the effects get felt so widely from one of these types of events, right? That it may not be very damaging in one particular area, but across the board, they have a huge amount of potential
Danes, hit that refresh one more time for me. I want to see where it wraps around from northern Hokkaido down to Chiba in Japan. Yeah, it did. So there was reports down in the middle of Japan. It's an area called Chiba, and there was some reports of flooding. I was just curious on how well it wrapped around. That shows it right there pretty good.
Right, wraps around the coast. Moving on, so that was the, what was generated. But at this point in time, right after the earthquake happens, the most immediate concern that we've beaten the drum about is if you're in the region where you can feel the quake and you have difficulty standing, you're near water, you need to move uphill immediately. And that's what happened on Kuril Islands in Russia. No time for an official order or anything like that. It's just left onto the people to make moves. And the urgency around, and then rather quickly, the tarps and the yurts and everything they had set up gets inundated by the tsunami. So lots of power in there, and it can happen really quickly if you're in that area of which the earthquake happens, right? But further away from there, we have more time. The closest then becomes Japan. So looking at Japan here, we can see the impacts. I believe this was Hokkaido, of a very northern part of Japan. First place to see the effects of the tsunami. And this is really the first place Lou and I started looking to see what the impacts were going to be like. We're trying to figure out how big of a wave is coming, right? We know a tsunami has been generated. There's no question. How big is it when it comes across the ocean?
This was going to give us a good indication right here.
Right. So we were watching several different live streams, watching the Japanese protocols for evacuation at the ports, similar to our protocols here, but the effects seem to be rather minimal, right? Which was interesting. We could definitely see the tsunami out there, though, and the waves. It's hard to know exactly what is tsunami waves, what's normal waves, but this is what it looked like. Now, from there, we kind of get into some gray area, right? Because there's not a lot between Kamchatka, Japan, and the Hawaiian Islands. We have some buoys out in the Pacific, which help monitor the depth or the water level. These are spread out, but then we have this big, vast area without any monitoring until we get to Midway Island.
That took forever, didn't it? At least it seemed like it did, right?
Right, because we were watching Japan, and we were like, okay, preliminary looks okay, But really, it doesn't matter until it gets to midway. And once it gets to midway, then we're going to have something to talk about. But I just wanted to show just how much of a gap there is there. So we did get these initial readings right outside of Kamchatka. We'll talk about those more a little bit later. But I want to highlight that one of those early stations gave a reading of 3-foot wave height in deep water, which is rather significant, right? So it's a question of how big is it, right? And Wake Island's going to be our barometer. So let's look at Wake Island, because there was some Midway. There was some confusion about what this station was. We saw a lot of reports and people commenting that the Midway station was a deep water station, just like the other stations that were along the way. But if you look here, Midway is located on Sand Island, just outside of the port, along the breakwater. And they even have some photos we can look at of the installation. And we can see that this is not a deep water station. It is on the shoreline, which is, a different variation of the data when we get it. It means different things. So let's look at that. This was our first real look at the water levels observed from one of these buoys that we were looking at. We saw this initial spike come through about a half a foot, or maybe, about a foot and a half, we'll say. And then it dropped off, and the amplification of that signal across the next few waves to being roughly 3 foot. This 3-foot wave that came to the shore at Midway Island, which we were excited about, but there was still a lot of talk about forecasts and models predicting that larger waves could get to particular bays in Hawaii. So everybody, we were still on edge. We were still taking it very seriously. Next point of contact was Kauai. So from Kauai, we were watching the one buoy that had monitoring, and that was on the south side of Kauai. And we could see that similar signal come across with that first peak, followed by larger 3 peaks behind it, and roughly about 3 foot. So along the same lines, consistent. Then when we came into Hilo, we see the similar pattern here with that initial spike, followed by a more significant second and third sets, and then a diminishing over the course of the tsunami, right? The tsunami is not just one wave, right? It's not 2, it's not 3, it can be a whole set of waves. And this one, it was really the first few that had the most impact. But if it was a larger tsunami, you could expect all of the subsequent waves to have an impact as well. The water is still churning out there. It's still agitated. We can see that it continues the agitation long after the initial surge comes through. So now we get to the Honolulu Bay, and we're in Kauai. So we're just looking at the first time lapses that we have, the first signals in Hawaii. Everybody was waiting to see what it did in Kauai to make further decisions, right? We don't know still exactly what it's going to be like when it gets here. And we can see the water go out about 100 feet, maybe 100 yards. It's hard to say there, but significant wave action to pull all that water out of there. And then it comes surging back in, but again, along the realm of 4 feet, I believe, in that area, maybe 5 feet. Not the big one we're looking, worried about. And from there, we get to Oahu. And the one thing about, like the tsunami, we were saying this at the time, is that the bathymetry of the bay itself, how that bay shallows, how it is shaped, can really amplify any potential tsunami. And we were really looking at Coconut Island in Hilo Bay, and as well as Bayfront in general, as being very conductive to tsunamis and producing large waves that are rather destructive. The town of Shimanshi was destroyed in 1946, rebuilt, destroyed in 1960, never rebuilt afterwards, now is kept as soccer fields for this exact reason. So in Oahu here, I show this one because you can see the water recede. You can see it come back in, but it's not nearly as dramatic as it was in Honolulu. And this is going to be true for other parts of the island as well, as some parts really are conductive, other parts not so much. They don't have the shape that amplifies the waves as much. So we get to Bayfront, and this was a great camera. I'm not sure whose camera exactly this was.
It's one of the hotel cameras.
It's one of the hotel cameras.
Mm-hmm.
But this thing was one of the few cameras that was, one, not being lagged out by the amount of people trying to access it. Two, had lights near the water such that when it went dark, we could still see something. A lot of these cameras that we had worked on Kauai. They worked on Oahu even. But by the time the wave got to Hawaii Island, it was just too dark. Yeah. I'm talking about maybe a half hour later, we barely had enough light in Kauai and Oahu to be able to see anything. So this camera was really the one live cam that we had. And not only was it the one live cam, this was the one spot I wanted to watch the most, right here, Coconut Island, and this particular spot. So we'll just show the time lapse over the course of the tsunami, and we can see rather quickly with that second wave, when it comes in, the water goes out and the water comes back in, and you can see it go across Coconut Island there, as well as covering the parking lot. And we have a second wave come in, and then the authorities like to keep watch on it, so they're going to see them pop in fairly frequently. And it really, from this camera, it was like, wow, it didn't do much. It got into Coconut Island, it flooded the parking lot, and then it was done. So, but that wasn't the extent. We did get on Bayfront Drive some inundation, we'll call it, at the hotel. Enough to get to the base of the doorway, right? A little bit higher, you have a lot more damage than this. But as it is, floods the parking lot, has some damage, requires some cleanup, right? But really, this is the bullet missed.
One more step, it would have been inside.
One more step inside. And I wanted to show this. This, I believe, is the same hotel from the same spot. Let me go back and just double check. Yes, so you can see this banner right here, the golden banner on the wall. So if we come over here to this video, same building, same location, they have the marks and stenciled onto the window of the height of previous tsunamis that have hit Hilo Bay. So 1957. But really, look at 1960.
That was the one.
We did not get inside the doorway on this one.
Nope.
And in 1960, it's out of her reach, basically. It's at the top 6 feet higher, something like that, maybe more. So
it's as tall as Nano.
You can see significantly more damage potential in a wave like that. And this one was just at the threshold, it felt like, of being a really damaging tsunami. And to highlight that, we did get a drone, little bit of Ring doorbell footage from Blue Planet Surf in Hilo. And they have the position on the Wailuku River. And you can see the water going down.
On a Hulu River.
Rushing, Hulu. And then rushing back up. And it repeats a few times here. But we've seen that in the waterways elsewhere too, in Japan and abroad, that how they would interact with these riverways in the deltas.
I bet they were a little nervous.
Yeah, as they say, it was almost flooded the deck.
Mm-hmm.
And that almost is the difference between barely any damage and potentially significant damage.
We got lucky.
We got lucky.
Yeah.
That was the slogan of Tuesday, it felt like.
Pretty much for everybody.
So National Geographic did put out an article. It was by Robin George Andrews, and I thought this was worth highlighting. I thought it was well written and goes through some of the different science and different considerations. One thing he brings up was that it's only been 5 decades or several decades since the large mega earthquake in 1952 in the same area, and that he finds it interesting, and some other geologists as well, how it was able to build up that much tension and that much pressure to be able to do it again so relatively quickly. So here we see some of the tsunami damage in Russia and Kamchatka, and that localized generated tsunami is no joke. Like, that is the one thing I want to emphasize, is those locally generated ones are really scary. And here's the result of that. But I did want to just point out just some of the, the Japanese. And okay, so this tsunami and earthquake in general, as far as we can tell, in the waves itself or from the earthquake itself, there were no deaths worldwide. Now, it might be too early to say that, but as of right now, we have no reports of any deaths worldwide as a direct result of the tsunami or the earthquake. However, there was one death in Japan. A woman drove her car off of a cliff and was killed during the evacuation, right? So even though dodged a bullet on the earthquake and the tsunami, you can still have casualties and fatalities that result. And there was more people injured, but those are really hard to quantify, especially as how broad of an area this all impacted. So they did also bring up in here that the magnitude 7.4 on July 20th might be considered a foreshock of the main shock that was the magnitude 8.8. That's not definitive or put in stone at this point, but it is a thought that's being tossed around. And I believe in Japan, they evacuated 1.9 million people over the course of the thing, which is a huge number. So I would just like to just highlight this, and they had one image I wanted to show down here of the Kamchatka and the tsunamis, and you can see all the agitation out in the bay and the water so disturbed out there. So, and it looks also like the water has receded back from the shoreline. So that was just a great image as well. But check out that National Geographic. And moving on, not to be outdone, the USGS put out a volcano watch on the magnitude 8.8. Anything that you jumped out at you on this one, Lou?
No, well, how quick they got it out was one of them. When I saw that pop into my box this afternoon, I was impressed. No, go ahead and go through it. There was a couple of highlights in there.
All right. Large distance earthquakes in the past have generated tsunamis that caused significant damage and deaths in Hawaii. 1946, magnitude 7.9 in the Aleutian Islands, Alaska, generated an earthquake that killed 159 people and a wave run-up of 16 meters or 55 feet. And then the 1960, magnitude 9.5, just huge earthquake. In South America and Chile, generated a tsunami that killed 66 in Hilo with a maximum wave run-up of 10.6 meters or 35 feet. And then we had the 2011, the Fukushima, that's how I remember it, earthquake, and the magnitude 9.1 that sent a wave about 3.6 meters or 12 feet that really did some damage in Kona on the west side of Hawaiʻi Island. So one of the things, though, that they highlight as well is they don't
miss a chance to remind you that local tsunamis, however, do not need to travel farther than our shores, which leaves little time. The large slips along the base of Hawaiian volcanoes have historically produced damaging earthquakes, resulting in local tsunamis. These events leave little time. Researchers have modeled that the tsunami generated from the south flank of Hawaiʻi Island, which is the area that the magnitude 6.9 in 2018 activated, can wrap around Hawaiʻi Island and reach Hilo Bay in 4 to 5 minutes. Now, if you were in Pohiki, it would be significantly less, right? There's other places that are closer that would be impacted in 1, maybe 2 minutes. So 4 to 5 minutes, and entirely around the island in 10 minutes or 10 to 15 minutes onto Maui. So these really do not give any time for the normal listen to the tsunami siren, get on your radio, listen to what the radio announcement says. If you have one of those earthquakes that's strong enough that you can't stand, you need to get uphill without anybody telling you, because you don't have time for anybody to tell you. And that was one of the biggest takeaways for me. And also the Phil's one that he brings up quite often, the 1868 whammy of a disaster with multiple earthquakes, or multiple magnitude 7+ earthquakes, multiple volcanoes erupting, landslides, locally generated tsunamis. That really is the worst case scenario that we talk about for what we can come to expect, is not expect to happen, but the high end threshold of what's possible, because it's already happened before. It's not theoretical. So that was the USGS's article on it. And you can read that on our website as well, hveri.org. I did want to just highlight just some of the buoys. Oh, yes, Phil.
Can I jump in here real quick?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so can you pull back where you just were on your screen?
This right
so I was going to say a couple of things, about this. For one, the size of earthquakes, right, is something that's hard for people to actually grasp, this whole exponential scale of it. But let me just point out that one of the aftershocks of that 8.8 earthquake was a 6.9. And those of us who were here in 2018, we know how big a 6.9 actually was. That was the aftershock for this event, right? So that's an important thing. And so it's really about the length of the ground and the amount of area that's actually displaced. I see there's a comment on here. Maybe I can pull this up here. A comment from Brett here, saying that sometimes landslides caused by earthquakes can cause tsunamis as well, which is absolutely true, right? But there's a difference in the kind of tsunamis it can generate. A landslide is more likely to cause that splashing and surging locally, whereas if you have something coming from, because that's the ground coming from above down into the water, if something's happening at the base of the water moving up, then that's a much broader, wider, longer area, and you can generate much bigger events. And in particular for Hawaiʻi Island, there's a limit to how long that fault is. If you connect the southwest flank of Mauna Loa, southwest rift, Mauna Loa summit, Kilauea summit to the southeast rift, like the area we think might have moved in 1868, the maximum area, it's only so long, the island's only so big. So that we cannot generate larger than a magnitude 8-ish, we believe, because we don't have enough area to do it in. That 9.5 in Chile, I want to say it was something like a 1,000-mile rupture that caused that 9 point. It was something ridiculous. So I mean, might be really rounded, right? So you have to have longer faults to generate bigger earthquakes. And so we have a pretty big one to get about an 8 size, but we can't get that extra exponential magnitude because we just don't have enough island. So it's enough for us to worry about with what we got. And I'll leave it at that. Right. But we don't have to worry about a magnitude 9 here. Magnitude 8 is enough for us to worry about.
Right, and it's a nonlinear scale, as everybody should know. Is an 8 isn't just 1 bigger than a 7; it's 100 times bigger than a 7.
Yeah, I don't know if you're going to talk about you guys talk about evacuations in
coming
Japan?
up. Japan evacuations. I do not have extra on. The interesting thing to me on the Japanese.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm going to jump off and get Lou back in here. Thanks. Sorry.
Yeah. No, thanks for jumping in. I was just going to say the interesting thing about the Japanese
evacuation to me was that how efficient it seemed, right? We jumped on the live cameras and we were watching people head out of the docks and the boats and the cruise ships or the transport vessels and everybody heading out. And then an hour later, everybody coming back in. Essentially, they saw what they needed to see and it went back to business as normal pretty quickly. It was interesting.
One thing the Japanese do on a regular basis is educate, and there isn't a place you can go on the shoreline. It doesn't matter whether it's a school, a restaurant, a public park. There are signs that are clearly visible in every single location, and they're taught from a very young age to follow directions, follow them efficiently, orderly, move. When you're told to do something, do it that way and don't deviate. And they are exceptionally good at it. I've watched through several different massive earthquakes living over there, the big typhoons that came through. They were organized and they are efficient. So it was not a big surprise to me during this how not relaxed they were in it, just how well they functioned during it. And you said, what was the number, Dane? 1.4, 1.6 million evacuated. 1.9. Yeah. That is a massive amount of people to move, and their roads aren't giant highways like we have throughout California or Montana. They're small roads, so they're good,
efficient. All right, so moving on, I did want to just highlight these official buoy heights from the various buoys. It starts at the bottom here. These are the ones that first give readings, and then as we get more readings closer to Hawaii and then into Hawaii going up. But it was this first DART station, this deep water station, that really caused a lot of the alarm, in my opinion, besides it being such a big quake and having such an impact, obvious impact, and having all of the criteria to be produce a big tsunami. This one station seemed to indicate that something was out there. Now, we didn't see this at other stations, and then we didn't really see it until we got to Midway, but that's a shoreline station, not a deep water station. So a 3-foot run up there wasn't the worst news. And we continued across the Pacific until we got to Honolulu and Kauai.
Blow that up just a little bit, Dane. Can you blow that up just
more?
A little bit more? Yeah, there we go. There you go.
And then continuing up until we get to Hilo with its 4.9. And this is, I believe this one is, we'd have to look. I don't want to go look because it's buried right now. But, near another shoreline station, we've talked about Hilo Bay and how well it amplifies these tsunamis and makes even a small tsunami rather significant. But one of the biggest impacts wasn't the tsunami itself, it was the reaction to it. And this was what Lou was alluding to earlier, is we just immediately jammed up almost every road on the island, it felt like. And
everyone.
hours and hours long delay. So especially for Oahu, the evacuation, once it was issued, it was issued fairly early, and there was time for people to be stuck in traffic. If you're stuck in traffic for 2 hours and it's coming in 5 hours, well, you're out of the way with plenty of time to spare, right? But it doesn't make it any easier for the people that might be late to evacuate, especially if these roads are still jammed up by then. You hope that the road situation improves, but we saw it lasting for most of the event. The busy roads and standstill conditions, bumper to bumper, people going home, people trying to get to their families, trying to get out of the area, everything in between. So, and then the amount of traffic accidents as a result, which only complicate the situation even further. And this was really the main takeaway for me in all of this is, okay, we do have time to get the evacuations, even with terrible traffic conditions. Maybe that can be improved when we have 6 hours of lead time. a locally generated tsunami, we are not going to have that at all. So
you know what this traffic congestion told me? For as long as we saw it going on, the hours, it told me that there was a lot of people that took this serious, that just didn't take an alarm and say, oh, we're going to be all right. It was actually good to see. Now, yeah, we have some things to work on, but if those roads were clear and we didn't have all the traffic backed up, that would be kind of disappointing that people aren't taking this serious, because it was a very serious situation. So it was good and a good learning point for us, and good to see on my side. He's talking. Oh, and the other thing was, I'm gonna have Dane pull up the break wall or the Coconut Island inside the Hilo Bay when we get a chance, because I want to bring something up in there that a few people have talked about that maybe a lot of people don't quite understand about Hilo Bay. Oh. Okay. Oh, good. You're right there. Yeah. So Coconut Island is inside the break wall, the breakwater wall that's there, and the water still rose. That break wall isn't preventing the tsunami at all. It's still coming in. So a lot of people always say, well, you guys build more break walls, build bigger break walls. That's not the solution there, because you can see, obviously, Coconut Island started getting water over the top of it.
Right. And this is different than these breakwaters and some that they have in Japan, which are like retaining walls.
They're designed for it.
Right. Our breakwater just is meant to make the water in Hilo Bay easier to traverse for shipping.
Yeah, we have barges and we have a cruise ship and we got fishermen. More what it's designed for.
Exactly. All right. So moving back forward. Don't got much more here. I did want to just highlight that the evacuations that kind of sloppy, kind of like we didn't know certain things. One particular one was
one more size up on that. Can you blow that up one more? There you go.
Is that the people that were evacuating often were tourists, and those were the majority of people that were showing up at shelters. Many of the residents of Hawaii, they had friends and family that they could go to inland and stay at their place for a little while. But the tourists, after getting kicked out of their hotel and told to evacuate, they really didn't know where to go. So ended up wandering into different areas, often going to stores looking for supplies. We heard complaints from people working the shelters, or not the shelters themselves, but aware of what was happening. Like, nobody's showing up with supplies. It's like, yeah, they're tourists. Of course they don't have 2 weeks of food on them. Yeah. Right. And that's a problem that we need to address in the future. Is, maybe there's something more strategic that can be done, especially for the cruise ship people that were left behind when the cruise ship pulled out of Hilo Bay to go out to deep water, as the Coast Guard was advising. Right. But they did so before everybody was on board and accounted for, including some of the deaf community. So that was disappointing to see, something to definitely work on going forward. And now I just want to show the evacuation zones. I'm going a little bit over, but these evacuation zones and how much of the area is covered in, these areas that are prone to tsunamis. And one thing that I felt like I kind of knew, but I didn't really have enforced in me, is that this zone that is described here is kind of an on-off switch, in that you're either evacuating all of it or you're evacuating none of it. Now, some of these areas, I was like, I don't see that being a problem in terms of needing to be evacuated potentially. Other areas like Hilo, the inundation zone, yes, this is very accurate. This is definitely evacuate and been shown. So we have all these areas that got evacuated, and I believe, these were great to evacuate. Some other ones, maybe not as necessary, but just highlighting that it's a yes or a no. Do you evacuate or do you not? And if you're evacuated, the way it's set up now, as far as I see it, if you're evacuating Hilo Bay, you're evacuating everywhere on this previous map that's been highlighted. Whoops. So that means all of the Puna coastline, as well as the west coast of stretching from Hawaii to Mililii and further. So a huge amount of area that is being evacuated. So yeah, that's part of the reason why we had, so much vehicles on the road. And one of the other things that led to, I don't have a picture for it, but the second great toilet paper run following the COVID-19 toilet paper runs, right? We saw empty store shelves from people that once they got the warning went and stocked up immediately at the store. So we kind of saw a store rush again. Some people that, taking it seriously, but not seriously enough to already have those supplies, so to speak. So yeah, I believe that comes to the end of our tsunami coverage here. Is anything you'd like to add there, Lou?
No, you covered it pretty good on we definitely learned a lot. This was a real life drill, and other than maybe traffic and helping more assistance for the deaf community and for the tourists, kind of different boxes that we haven't looked at enough. I think that will definitely has raised some awareness. I think that's good. It was a long day, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
The unknown and the uncertain is always more stressful than anything else. Kind of like we say with lava, when we can see it, we feel a little bit better. When we don't know where it's at and what it's doing, a little higher tension. Do you want to cover a couple questions in here?
Yeah, let's go ahead and throw those in here. So, do you have a hurricane coming your way? I believe there is. Yeah, there is a. We're starting to track it. It's starting to pop up on our radar.
Yep. Hurricane Gil is out there.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have more to post on that, but for those types of updates, we'd recommend Hawaii Tracker on the Facebook. We have regular weather updates as well from National Weather Service, as well as from local experts like Harry Durgan.
Yeah, we're a couple days away from hitting the 140 line, and
that's maybe where things start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Sunday, Monday, we'll know a little bit more.
Raven asks, I will say I was thinking about Poiki during the tsunami and hoping that progress wasn't hindered by the wave surges. I'll tell you that I checked the Poiki webcam that we installed down there. Not all day, but I checked it afterwards to see you couldn't see a thing. There was nothing. There was no water. It was at night. We don't have night vision hooked up for it out at officially range. There was nothing to be seen. I don't expect any impact, especially to the dredging project.
Right.
Not on this one. And then Brett asks, I know they're on the Oregon coast. They have structures you can climb up in the event of tsunami. Does Hawaii have these? Not structures so much. There's something called a vertical evacuation, which case it's basically go to a high rise that, the higher than 11. I can't remember how many floors it needs to be, but say 11 floors. That's pretty high. And be up above that and just stay in the hotel or whatever building that you're in Hilo. There's none of those in the area that's most prone to the tsunami. So and it's easy enough to get further uphill. But on Oahu, that's more of a thing, the vertical. And in Kona, we saw hotels. Some of the hotels issued evacuation orders for the people staying there. Other ones told them to evacuate vertically into the upper levels of the hotel, and they just stayed there.
Yeah, it's above a fourth floor, above the fourth floor in a 10+ story building.
Okay.
Yeah. You got a volcano question? You want to take that? You can take this one. I put it up there for you.
Oh.
There you go.
Did the 8.8 affect Kilauea at all? Not really. We saw it on the tilt meters, right? So it definitely was, came through the area. It had enough to impact the tilt meters, but we don't think it changed any of the timelines for the next episode of Kilauea. All right. I think that gets us through it. If you want to throw us into Community Corner, you can take her away.
All right. Let's do that. All right. We do have some stuff, and it is tsunami related in the park. Let's jump over here. We do have our typical closures, the KVC, the Kilauea Visitor Center. Wait, who do I have up here? I got Dano. All right. How we doing, Dano? You ready for me? Let's do this. The Kilauea Iki Trail, Western Switchbacks, has got some work going on it. The trailhead's closed to vehicles going up the Mauna Loa Road. We're going to talk about that and those pesky yellow jackets. But first, August 1st, that's tomorrow. It's the monthly test of Hawaii's statewide outdoor warning siren system. Okay, this is a monthly test of Hawaii's statewide outdoor siren system. It's every first business day of the month. Okay, 11:45 a.m. The test will be conducted in coordination with a test of the live audio broadcast segment of the emergency alert system. During the test, all statewide outdoor warning systems will sound a 1-minute attention alert signal characterized by a steady tone. These routine tests occur on the first working day of each month at 11:45 a.m. No emergency exercise or drill will be conducted alongside this test. If a siren is heard outside of a scheduled test, check the Everbridge app, local radio, or television broadcasts for official emergency civil updates from Civil Defense. Hey, Dane, are we still using Everbridge? They didn't change that, did they?
Yeah, we're still using Everbridge, and now the HPD, the Hawaii Police Department, are also using Everbridge as well.
Good.
Everybody's on Everbridge.
So this is I have a picture of a newer siren right there. But this is a good opportunity that if you are in a tsunami area, your neighborhood, you just happen to be in town and you spot one and you're around this time, listen for it. Because if you don't hear it, report siren operation issues, contact emergency management and county civil defense agencies. And there's the phone number, 808-935-0031. It's a good opportunity now to help the community. And just if it's not working, we need to know. So that's going to happen tomorrow. And we are going to see this episode 30 any day now. I'm sure of it. But we want to bring up lava viewing locations all around the caldera. Stay in bounds. There's a lot of traffic moving around outside areas. And numerous signs along Devastation and Byron Ledge trails warn visitors to just stay back, stay on the trails, because this is the spot that the guy decided to get a closer look on. At night, you don't see it just drop off because you're looking out at the volcano and not focused on the ground. So it's not a good thing to do, just to walk around randomly out there. Stick to the trails. We did cover last week the roundabout, and I'm not going to go through all those photos again. I got an opportunity to drive through it. The first part of it is wonderful. It's quite the construction project going on. The exit is still under construction. So if you have 4-wheel drive, take a look and see if you want to lock your hubs in. If you don't know how to drive in a roundabout, I recommend this is the one to get some education on, because as I was driving through it, I see how it might be a little tough when there's a lot of traffic because you don't know which way to go. Today is World Ranger Day. Rangers who protect and manage thousands of national parks and protect areas worldwide. It's a moment to honor their diverse roles, including law enforcement, search and rescue, conservation, fire management, and education. The day also pays tribute to the Rangers who have made the ultimate sacrifice while working to safeguard these natural and cultural treasures. There's about 20,000 Rangers in the national park system, and it's not just national parks. It covers memorials and a whole bunch of other places around the country. And I let's just read a little homework. And I found that in all of the existence in the early 1900s of park rangers, there has not been one fatality due to an animal attack. I thought that was kind of unique. Just about everything else we've lost rangers to, but nothing to ever an animal attack. And watch out for these, because nene are dangerous. If you know geese, watch out for them, not just because they might nip you, but they are flocking up, and we want to let them just have their space. There is a shot of our new temporary Kilauea Welcome Center. It's up at KMC. They have a gift store in there. The Rangers hang out in there to answer all your questions. You can buy a coffee cup or a lid or some type of memento. There's our map from the entrance all the way up to the Welcome Center. You can't miss it. You pass the steam vents and you keep driving. It's on the right. Look for the big flagpole. Parking is back behind the construction of the HVO facility that's going on. This is the Western Switchbacks announcement of the closures Monday through Thursday, 6 a.m. to 4 p.m., but it's open to hikers at other times. Mauna Loa Road going up to the lookout is closed, and that's because we've had some dry weather. Campgrounds remain open, but campfires and open flame cooking fires are prohibited at the campgrounds. You can use your propane and your gas stove. How we doing, Dano? You caught up? All right. Backcountry hikers with a permit will be provided access to the end of Helena Pali and Mauna Loa Road. So if you're like us and you get backcountry permits, it's a long hike if you don't drive. So check in with them and they'll give you a ride to where you need to go. Chain of Craters Road is back opened up. They shut that down following yesterday's tsunami. Chain of Craters Road and the coastal area are now open and safe for visitors. And there is the one program that is running at the park. There may be others. They're just not putting it on their website or on their Facebook or their X or their Instagram. I pretty much scour everywhere looking to see if they drop it somewhere else. But they may have it going on. Just have to go into the Welcome Center to find out. And this weekend is the first Saturday of the month. You get free admission for Kama'aina, ID required. Head down to the Tsunami Museum and get firsthand information. Their director, Cindy, will be happy to give you all kinds of information on tsunamis, as well as her staff in there. Check them out. They're downtown Hilo Bayfront. What a place for a tsunami museum. And there's just one last final reminder about our siren tomorrow. Don't panic. Listen. Make sure it works. Call it in if it doesn't. And we have a free day going on. A Great American Outdoors Act was signed in 2004. So you get a free day at the park, free day at the museum, free day at the park. Big Island's looking good right now. Marks the 5th anniversary of the Great American Outdoors Act, landmark legislation that made a huge difference for the national park and Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. The act enables park to make large-scale repairs and improvements such as critical fence and greenhouse repairs, water treatment system, rehabilitation, and improvements to Mauna Loa Road at the Big Island National Park. And I was just up at the Mauna Loa Road heading up to the observatory, and it's still covered in lava. So anything we can get to get that done would be nice. And if you have not subscribed to our email, there it is, hveri.org/subscribe. And you can get notified when the next eruption episode happens. And you can follow us here on all kinds. You can go over to hveri.org/follow and join up on one of our social media sites. I put a little special thing here for birthday boy Dane. 60 more followers, and Dane said, or 40 more followers. Dane says we can go live on LinkedIn. Dane.
That's your goal.
It's my goal.
Yeah.
And there we are, Dane.
Yeah, so actually we now phased out the Puna Strong and Kilauea recovery program. So really we're just focused on the VIBI grant supporting us. If you'd like to support us, we do take donations over on hveri.org/donate. There you go. And we also take super chats from YouTube. We did have a couple super chats today come through. A $5 early from Happy Rock. Light art information be useful. I believe that's for Poiki. Yes. Everything's useful down there for such a project. And Norm from Hawaii, $10 donation. And then a second $10 donation and a $50 donation from Sky Ed. It says over on the HVERI website. Appreciate all the support. All right, we have a final segment, and I believe we at this point will be losing our ASL interpretation team. We appreciate Daniel and Carrie for stopping in today, and we will have a recap of the 2018 eruption presented by resident geologist Philip Ong, and that'll run till the end of our program. So appreciate everybody who tuned in today. Thanks for all the birthday wishes and everything along those lines. Unless you have anything else, Lou, I will start to get us ready for the ending bit.
Dano, thank you. Carrie, thank you. Go ahead and ice those shoulders down. Try to take it easy on you tonight. Take it
All
easy.
right. Take care. All right, and with that, let's go ahead and get set up.
An impact to this. The point today is just
hold on there, Phil. Calm down. And then we were gonna step out of here and just full screen this for you guys so you can relive a little bit of that eruption. Appreciate everybody that tuned in today for our volcano update, as well as our Kamchatka magnitude 8.8 review. And now back to 2018 and the Lower East Rift Zone eruption of Kilauea.
So we're going to go through, hopefully kind of briefly, we realize there's a big human impact to this. The point today is just kind of recap. It's been a while. I know maybe some of us block a lot out. If if this is something traumatizing to you, then please feel free to skip it. But the point is just to kind of remind ourselves of the progression and clear up some of the fogginess and the blurriness of memory that comes with time here. So, all right. Everything began in 2018. The sequence kind of began back in April, really. April 13th, 2018 is when we had the first lava lake overflows of the year. You can see that bottom panel here, lava was flowing across. That's about 2/3 of Maui crater. This was actually a series of overflows in the 25th, 26th. The previous one was a few days before that. And during that same interval, the whole floor of Pu'o'o, 12 miles away, was also getting uplifted. So all of that to say that the volcano was really pressurized. If we look at this cross-section, USGS cross-section here, we see that of all the different plumbing parts of the volcano, at this South Caldera chamber, the Upper Halimamau chamber, the rift zone, everything, all the system, all the way from Pu'o'o to the summit, everything was completely pressurized to the point of spilling out the top, essentially. So April 30th was when it really was obvious that it was essentially the point of no return, as far as I'm concerned, when we saw the first major domino that set things off. And that was the collapse of Pu'o'o after a 4.2 earthquake on April 30th. It set off a kind of pinkish, grayish cloud there you see photographed that was seen across a lot of Lower Puna. And people saw that, they knew something was going on at Pu'o'o. And soon afterwards is when the earthquakes actually followed. So we'll get to the earthquakes here, but here's a before and after of Pu'o'o, April 18th and May 3rd, showing that upper part of the crater floor up in here. Fully collapsed, right? You actually had two different pits, and you can see the new collapsed pit and engulfs both of them. After the fact, they came back and measured this. I want to say over 1,000 feet deep. A pretty dramatic difference at Pu'o'o there. As a little footnote, there is evidence of a little eruption pre-collapse. This is on a west flank of Pu'o'o. So this is looking towards the east. The Lower East Rift Zone would be off in that direction over there. There's this crack with steam coming out of it on the side, and there was one spot the USGS came here and released this photograph of, looks like fresh lava had come out of that crack. Not very much, not very far, but you can see the pressure was enough to actually burst up out of the ground at Pu'o'o, and then essentially burst down the ground, burst underground across some barrier. And so here's that similar cross section. Here's that Summit Caldera complex, East Rift Zone going this way, and a blockage might have existed somewhere over here prior. And once that broke with the April 30th event, the magma then was able to reoccupy the Lower East Rift Zone, moving past lots of other stored magma bodies, some of which it pushed up to the surface, and that's what drove the beginning of that eruption right in there. I've shown here on the bottom the tilt plot from those times for those of you guys that haven't been following with us for that long. The scale in microradians here on the side goes from -200 to 0 to 200. So this is actually 1,000 microradians in total, top to bottom. So the green line is Pu'o'o. We saw April 30th, a big collapse of Pu'o'o right there. And a big inflation, actually. That was probably that little eruption event. Then a collapse. And then we saw on May 4th, a big earthquake on the south flank, the 6.9. And it was actually after that event, after this 4:30 event, that we saw the blue line on the summit start to come downhill. That's the deflation of the summit, right? Which first is the draining of Maui lava lake, and then the collapse of the crater walls. And then eventually it becomes collapse of the caldera with a stepwise up and down starting on the 15th or so. Okay, this is the initial activity. This is essentially that month of earthquakes leading up to the eruption. And you can see that there are times that we had bursts of lots of earthquakes underneath the summit, right? We knew that magma was coming in. We saw earthquakes flaring off in an upper east rift zone and an upper southwest rift zone at the same time, as well as under the summit, over and over and over. The south flank was actually pretty quiet much of that time, right? Until that 420 event. And afterwards, we saw a bunch of earthquakes proceeding from that area down towards Leilani Estates, where lava then emerged on May 3rd. Right? You see the south flank earthquake there shown is not the one that's to come the next day on May 4th. So we'll come to that here in the next interval. But to recap that first week saw 15 fissures across 3 miles, 5 kilometers of the subdivision. Lava took 36 homes in the first 5 days in Leilani Estates and Lani Puna Gardens. See, that's more sluggish, slow-moving lava that was the first to come out, but still across such a wide area that it had a devastating impact there at first. And of course, of those first 15 fissures, fissure 8 was the most active and did flow out and consume a good amount of those houses. At the summit, lava lake started to drain. Here's a picture on May 6th of a much deeper pit. The lava had just been overflowing up on this upper rim a few weeks before that, 1 week before here. Right? So lava started draining out fairly quickly, easily visible by May 6th. We'll show you guys the thermal time lapse here of that draining sequence on May 6th. May 7th now, actually for May 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. So it was going slowly the whole time, just more obvious as time went on. So the next week of seismicity was dominated by that big earthquake at 6.9 right through here, when a flank moves about 20 inches. And that essentially is what allows the next phase of the eruption to occur. I mean, magma had pressurized so much that it was actually essentially in the rift zone, pushing on the south flank. As magma was draining from the summit into the rift zone, it exerted additional pressure on that south flank, and it seems like the combination of all those things set off the south flank with that 6.9 earthquake. So from research after the fact, they believe that this blue area was the area that slipped here. Some of the areas slipping more than others right through here, and you see everything, all these arrows are GPS vectors on land pointing towards the ocean of the direction of movement of the south flank there. Another graphic showing the rift zone itself as a schematic colored bar here. And it's showing the coloration of where there was a net loss of material and net gain of material. And so as this earthquake moved to the south flank and centered here, everything moves off in this direction. All the magma that had been built up in this area, upper east rift zone in the summit, was then able to flow down and accumulate in this area. So net gain in the lower east rift zone, and net withdrawal of the upper and middle east rift zones and the summit of Kilauea as well. Okay, a couple graphics here. It's a little busy, but focus just on the top one first here. This is an image from IRIS Consortium, Educational Consortium, and they're showing here a structure looking from the center of the island off towards the south, right? So Mauna Loa is up here, Kilauea summit's right there. showing a melt zone from the mantle coming through the base of the mantle and tectonic lithospheric plate here, crust. And all these black lines are faults in that shallower, brittle crust there. So the magma coming up through all of that with these interaction of the fault zones and the summit occurring right in here. So I've essentially tried to Frankenstein an image together down here that puts all this together, right? So the black lines are the faults right here on the bottom, the south flank moving off in this direction. And the magma coming from the summit through the rift zone is making use of these vertical, subvertical areas of the faults, right? And that's what the rift zone essentially is. Another way of explaining the rift zone is this area of pulling by gravity that's opening it, and then it being injected by magma as well. It's the magma using the fault zone as a pathway in these areas. And that's what that rift zone really is. So the south flank moves, that allows the rift zone to open even further beyond what had already happened at Pu'o'o, where magma had gone towards Leilani. The ground had already been opened, lava was already coming out when the 6.9 happened. And when it did, that essentially opened the valve, but it opened it far enough upstream that it took a little while. So that next week was mostly dominated by activity in the lowest east rift zone. This is Fissure 17 you're hearing. And those exploding sounds were constant. And this is the fissure that put out the stickiest lava. I gotta turn that sound off. It's a little too triggering, maybe still. But yeah, that's where that stickiest lava came out, and there was actually some stored lava that got pushed at the very, very far edge, but that's more of the chemistry story. We'll leave that for some other time, and we've discussed that in the past as well. Keeping to our chronology here, at the summit, collapses begin on May 15th in earnest with large, dark ash plumes. The first few of those actually go up 30,000 feet and issue some aviation alerts in response. But ultimately that was the peak of it, and there were no larger explosions beyond that, mostly gas driven from the magma that was built underground. Down in the Lower East Rift Zone, as that large surge of magma from the summit region arrives down in the area, fresh lava surfaces, we were up to 23 fissures, 8 of them erupting at once. Fast-moving flows reached down to the ocean, just east of Mackenzie Park. Take 42 more homes in total between Leilani, Lanipuna, and Pohuiki area down in there. In that time, we had these methane blue flames filmed coming out of the cracks. This is a drone image from the USGS that's looping through here, right? From the fissure and looking down towards the coastline far away, and really interesting how fast the lava got down there. Our friend Ikaika talks about having seen big albizia trees floating in the water ahead of that flow that were just charred on the outside. The lava pushed them so fast downhill and out of the way. So that was the third week. The fourth week, Fissure 8 reactivated. 6-mile long flow, 10 kilometers, consumes 153 more homes. And the other fissures keep spattering more in a Strombolian activity, but really it was Fissure 8 that you see here. That was the story of the rest of the eruption beginning in this fourth week here. And I'm generalizing a lot. I'm just really trying to make some big picture reminder here, yeah. All right, so week 5, the lava channel is formed. Lava funnels down Kapoho in 2 days. Then the whole Kapoho area gets taken out beginning here. 319 homes that week. Kapoho Bay, Green Lake, Waiapai tide pools, Champagne Pond, all in that 5th week, end of May to the 1st week of June. There it is, Fissure 8, since rechristened Ahu Aila'au. Big lava channel. Just one part of that, what ended up being 7 to 8 mile long lava channel. pouring into the ocean there. All right, summit collapses continue. This is June 6th, week 5. This is I thought this was more interesting to see now in the hindsight of the last 4 years of what's happened at the summit. You can still see the parking lot over here on the left side of the image. So this is not fully through the full caldera collapse yet. The whole down drop block is yet to form all over here. But you do see that inner pit of Hale-Ma'u-Ma'u, that lowest part of the collapse starting to form already there. Still collapses were ongoing. Meanwhile, weeks 6 through 8 down in the lower east rift zone were a little more stable. Once lava had overrun Kapoho and established an ocean entry, it widened the ocean entry across a 3-mile, 5-kilometer width. It extended the coast outwards half mile, 800 meters. By this point in time, we're up to 580 total homes lost. The peaks of the fountains come around this time at about 260 feet or 80 meters. Right there, you can see that fluid river of lava issuing from the vent there. Okay. There is that 8.5-mile lava channel that was in that later part of it when it had rediverted. Maximum speed, this has been discussed, but the number I have written down here, 17 miles an hour, 27 kilometers per hour estimated max speed. That's I think the USGS measured. Some people did other similar measurements and came up with similar values. As far as estimated depth, 20 to 80 feet, 5 to 15 meters, varying depending on where along the path of the channel there. All right. Panoramic view of it. So panning from Hawaiʻi around Green Crater up over there to the south. Okay, so the next couple weeks, end of June, first 2 weeks of July, we started to see these lava islands, lava rafts, moving downstream, and eventually they blocked the channel, diverted the flow, and the flow went around the west side of Pu'ukapoho, Green Mountain there. And that unfortunately caused lava to overrun the Kuokala School, Halanui Warm Ponds, a whole new 2.5-mile, 4-kilometer path of the ocean. And that's because a lot of these pieces were getting broken off from the channel walls we were seeing, and a lot of these channel walls were getting undercut, and chunks would fall off, and you can see them getting rafted downriver there. And sometimes you'd see them emerge out of the lava like we saw in that first frame there. So that gives you some idea of the depth in some areas there. And there are Behovita Halanui. There's what it looked like after the lava overran it. Okay, this is Cosmo SkyMed, partial caldera collapse here, a view from space, showing over time the collapse of the caldera. See it coming in there. So as it gets to the end, I can point out the features we now know. There's our down drop block all over there. There's that inner pit of Hale-Ma'u-Ma'u, which has all been filled by now, and now we're actually lapping on to these areas over here on this edge right over here. I can play it one more time. You can see how that down drop block forms later on in the process, right? It kind of grows from a smaller radius to a slightly larger radius to a slightly larger radius, right? We see that this innermost deepest pit collapse first, and then it was this next slightly bigger area, and then it was eventually that whole area. All right. Ahuaila'au, Fissure 8. By the beginning, last 2 weeks of July, coming into August, started to fluctuate. We started to see surges following some collapses. 2 to 3 hours after the collapses, the lava would overspill the banks. During the lulls, the lava might harden in the channels and slow the flow. Here we've documented in at least one area, the relative difference in elevation of lava in the same channel from the same point of view. So you can see here different aerial views of empty and full. Coming down to the river. See much of that eastern part of Kahului entry had actually cooled off already, but the pattern was one of more fluctuation. We'd worry more when these surges would occur. A lot of lava would break out and establish a new path out and possibly take out more stuff, but fortunately didn't happen beyond the one time. All right, the last 4 weeks, the last month of the eruption, August 3rd to September 6th, the fountains dwindled fairly quickly once the summit collapse has ended. August 3rd was the last collapse. The channel drained for 3 weeks, still putting lava into the ocean by Pohuiki Bay, still threatening the bay. Ahu'aila'au collapsed, refilled, collapsed a little more, refilled a little more. And ultimately it was over by the beginning of September. Still, it was a stressful time. Even as lava drained towards Pohuiki, to think how far might it come and would it take out the boat ramp. At the time we were concerned about the lava being the main aggressor there, right? And what happened after the fact was the sand is what really blocked it all off from the currents. So the aftermath, this is Leilani Estates in Ahu'aila'au. This was taken shortly afterwards, right? So since then, there's been a little bit of revegetation on the margins, especially. But you can see here the grid of the subdivision disrupted by this new natural feature that's cutting off all the roads here. So in the aftermath, a lot of gas venting in a lot of areas, even uprift, as well as eruption sites. That went on for a while. It's diminished a little bit, but it's still something that we'll have more learned to live with and has gone away completely as far as I understand. Some satellite images before and after. This is Leilani, zoomed in on the right into Ahu'aila'au area right through here. The grid beforehand, view after, and the zoomed out view here. So really it was that eastern part of Leilani Estates that was overcome by lava. Of course, everywhere else in Leilani was also overcome with the stuff falling from the air and the earthquakes and the gas and everything else that went along with it. Lots of branches we could go and talk at length about, but I'm just trying to keep it at a high level here as far as overview. Lamipuna Gardens on the left, Kapuho on the right. Before and after, you see how much more dark is on the image there. It's really heartbreaking to see these areas. All the community there displaced, right? And not a huge amount has changed since. All right, a little bit more of the recap here. Flows by week. We have here yellow was that first week of eruption. Moving to orange, the second set of fissures that occurred in that lower part of the rift there. Third week, ocean entry. Fourth week, pushing east towards Kapoho. The fifth and 6 weeks, right where it stays. And you can see we get into the purples in the later parts as the lava delta is expanding to the side. Recapping the sequence of eruption there. We can look at another view here. This is our time lapse of thermal images. So about one a day or so. Shows the progression of what was flowing and hot at what point in time, even as it spread around and covered more and more ground. Lava flow thicknesses, this is the preliminary map. So I'm missing some of the data here. I think there's a better one that I could find, but this is what I have right here right now. So you can see that in many areas where we have the greens, we're talking up to 50 feet in the greens. We're talking in the yellows up to 80 feet. Orange is up to 100 feet. The darkest red here from 180 to 919 feet. So in the offshore areas, 919 feet, huge amount of lava building a giant ramp offshore to extend the coastline out and further. In the onland areas, you see most of the thickest areas are these oranges here in Kapoho, 80 to 100 feet in some of those areas. Otherwise, you're looking at yellows, 66 to 82. So some really significant buildup of lava there. So it's not like you can dig down and excavate anything. You have to essentially start anew on top and deal with the fact that this thick flow is going to hold heat longest where it's thickest as well. We did have the Nautilus live expedition publish this image here, showing in red the addition of lava offshore. Right? So you see a little bit here at the Mackenzie area. See one lobe in the east for that initial Kapoho lobe that came around Green Mountain to the north and east, and then you see that second Pohoiki Halanui lobe that came in second after that diversion there. So everything matches up. Total homes lost, I think the number I got to was 716 permitted. A lot of other things unpermitted that we haven't seen research exactly nailed down. This is Dane's map. Go ahead, Dane.
Yeah, that wouldn't be exactly permitted. It would be they had a tax map key. They were taxed by the county as having a residence on them. Some of those were unpermitted, but they're recognized anyways, right?
Right. That's the number we're hearing from the county also.
Yeah. Right, and I do believe that number because I think my number of permitted homes ended at like 580, and then the rest were unpermitted, and then it got grayer and grayer the further you went into it. But yeah, that's roughly the number. But I heard people say oh, it's got to be 1,000 with all the unpermitted places. And I'm like, no, that I don't know where they would be hiding, because the satellite imagery we had was pretty good.
Yeah, and there is research coming out on this that's gonna accommodate for all structures and not just homes. So something it'll try to account for all the other stuff that's maybe not
kind of weird.
Yeah, extra house, carport, whatever, all those things. Anything
greenhouse that somebody sleeps in on the weekend.
Or even
stuff like that.
Even just greenhouse. I mean, even all those things should be counted at some point also as well. And so there's different ways of counting. And so I think that there is a different way of counting. That's we're still awaiting publication of the research to share officially what those estimates are. But yeah, a lot more than that. 30 miles, 50 kilometers of road covered, 875 acres of new land, 13.7 square miles, 35 square kilometers covered. 1 billion yards, 1.2 cubic kilometers erupted. Over 60,000 earthquakes over the whole sequence. 4,400 over magnitude 3 in those 3 months. Sounds crazy to say now how much happened there, right? Here is Pohoiki, right? The central image right in here. You can see that original bay for any of this eruption. It's coastline, all the way back, lava's going in the ocean. Up here in this image right here. So afterwards, everything has just been totally filled. The bay itself still exists as a bay, but you can see all the sand that's piled up in there. We've discussed this in the past as well. Different view of the sand blocking the boat ramp. Thermal ponds now behind the beach. So leave that at that. Before and after, we've shown different views of this in the past. In blue was the profile of the caldera before collapse, and red afterwards. And here's the beginning and ending images of that sequence that we showed you guys, that satellite view from. So to wrap it up here, we'll just show you guys that one final time lapse. This is a time lapse taken of the whole caldera collapse from April until August. As you see the lava lake overflowing here at the beginning. You see ash clouds coming up. Start seeing the ground drop out and vanish. Then you start seeing the slivers that are still leaning against the edges start dropping down as well. And eventually, there's our down drop block. Before and after comparison. Same view. It takes a while to train your eye to see what's the same since there's so much different in there. But all right, that's a short recap there. Short visual recap of what happened in 2018. There's obviously a lot more we could take it in lots of different ways. That eruption lasted 3 months, so not that we're going to be recapping 2018 constantly over the next 3 months, but there's plenty of time to pull things out here and there and talk about other aspects of it, right?
There we go. And we're back. All right. So yeah, we're just taking a look at the caldera up at the live view from USGS. No eruption started during our episode. We haven't had that happen yet, have one start. And we were in the window this week, and it looks like it'll be in the next few days, or maybe sooner than later. We don't know. But window is open. All right. Hey, real quick, Phil, since you're jumped on here, and in that video there, I saw the Nautilus, and I saw that before, and I was always wanting to bring that up. Did the Nautilus have any other data or anything they collected off the 2018 eruption?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that we just scrape the surface on that 30-minute talk, right? We have another talk about the community response that goes on like 2.5 hours, for example, right? So I really don't want to subject anyone to that.
Right.
There's a lot for the Nautilus there, including the thing that was most interesting to me, besides the actual lava accumulation and all that, the giant photoplankton bloom that occurred offshore as well from all the lava going into the ocean.
Right.
That was documented there as well. So yeah, there's a lot that I didn't mention or discuss or dive into because you saw like how much we had to cover, how long it took just to cover it at that level, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there was just so many details for us in there. How are you feeling about it now, Dane?
It feels like it was a long time ago, but it feels like it wasn't long ago at all. One thing it's amazing is how much of the jungle and everything is regrown in Leilani Estates. For years at this point, when you drive down Leilani Avenue towards the eruption site, it's been totally blocked by overgrown vegetation over the blocked road that nobody complains about blocking the view of that thing. I have never heard anybody at any association meeting like, we need to clean it up so I can see that eruption site. Nobody says that. Nope. But
yeah, pretty fascinating. Yeah, there's still not nearly as much steam and gas down there, but there still is some, and especially still get reports after heavy rains, especially, or slack winds. People smell things. Yeah. Earthquakes can still be triggering people. I've heard. Yeah, I mean, but I think that it really helps to have the last many years of lava at the summit now, and now we have this whole new phase of summit fountains. And I really, myself, I think about, we would never have had this without having that, right? So as tragic and destructive as it was in 2018, the flip side is we, as a result, get to see this really incredible phase of summit fountaining, this episodic, that I don't know that anyone has seen anything like this at Kilauea Summit in a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, craters filled a lot more since that update. So it's some of those information there is a little bit dated, but overall, all pretty relevant still.
Yeah. Well, we've gone pretty long today. We are coming up on the 2-hour mark. Don't see any questions in the chat. We do expect another episode sometime soon, but probably won't go live with anything as long as it's along the lines of the previous 29 episodes. Check out Hawaii Tracker on the Facebook. That is where we post the majority of our content, as well as all of the contributors in the Hawaii Tracker community, professional photographers, videographers, and amateur photographers, people visiting, everybody in between help share
as much information as possible there. So otherwise, we'll be back next week, 5 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time, and do it again. See what's going on. We'll probably have episode 30 to go over.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds great. Yeah, appreciate our ASL interpreters early on, lasting as long as it could. They're still recovering from their time last week. And appreciate Lou and Dane with the tsunami update today. That was awesome. And
Thank you,
until
Phil.
next week. From our nonprofit Hawaiian Volcano Education and Resilience Institute, I'm Philip Ong. For Lou Ettore, Dane DuPont. Aloha, everybody.